First, Shannon, tell us what's happening in Maple Grove.
Hey there, yeah, Wolf. I mean, they're still caucusing here in Maple Grove at this junior high. We've been basically walking the hallways, ducking our heads in and out of different caucus sites, seeing what's going on, seeing if they voted. We found one room that is done with their voting. It's precinct 18. We'll take you inside. Again, part of our whole democracy and process. Seems like they're talking about a few things. Now, sorry to interrupt, folks. We talked to John a little bit earlier. John is convening this caucus, and John has some vote totals for us. John, would you like to reveal those live on TV?
Yeah, sure. We've got 12 votes for Ron Paul. Woo! We've got 12 votes for Rick Santorum. We have 6 votes for Newt Gingrich. And 15 votes for Mr. Romney, Governor Romney.
So Governor Romney won here in this particular precinct. Governor Romney hasn't actively campaigned in Minnesota that much. Can I get a Romney supporter? Anyone here, one of the people that voted for Mitt Romney? No one wants to say right now? Okay, we spoke with you earlier. Apparently a few shy people don't want to talk about the numbers that are actually on there, but those are some of the raw numbers that are making up the results that you're seeing there back at headquarters.
And as I started up the incline, a sergeant was there, and he stopped me. He said, "Chief, please don't go up there." I said, "Is it Brandon?" He said, "Yes."
Brandon is Sergeant Brandon Powdard, the chief's 39-year-old son.
I went up there, and Brandon was lying on his back with his gun still in his right hand, clutch in his hand.
Brandon Powdard died instantly from a bullet to the head. Bill Evans was declared dead at a hospital. They had taken 25 bullets between them. The police cornered Jerry and Joe Kane 90 minutes later. The Kanes wounded 2 more lawmen before they were killed in a Walmart parking lot. Prior to May 20th, 2010, did you know anything about sovereign citizens?
Never heard the term. I called around Byron, talked to many departments. Nobody knew about sovereign citizens. I want to remind all of you about this sovereign citizen group.
Today, the sovereign citizens are Bob Powdard's obsession. At roll call, on a day we were with him, he stressed the importance of knowing who they are and the dangers they pose.
If Brandon and Bill had known these were sovereign citizens, they would be with us today. They didn't know.
What is a sovereign citizen?
Sovereign citizen, in its simplest form, believes that he is above the law.
J.J. McNabb has been studying sovereign citizens for a decade. She's testified before Congress and is writing a book about the movement.
He has a twisted sense of history, and he thinks that people who lived in the 18th century were free of all legal constraints, and they want to return to that time now.
Jerry and Joe Kane were part of an anti-government movement whose roots date back to the racist Posse Comitatus of the 1970s and the Montana Freemen of the 90s. Convicted Oklahoma City bomber Terry Nichols was a sovereign citizen, and tax filings by actor Wesley Snipes, convicted of tax evasion in 2008, include numerous examples of sovereign language.
Average sovereign citizen today is 30, 35, and is in economic dire straits. They've probably lost their job. They've probably lost the wife.
Paranoid?
Many are.
Conspiracy theorists?
Most are.
Do you trust the government? I would argue that it's un-American to trust the government.
Alfred Adisk has been a sovereign citizen for 28 years. He's what's called a sovereign guru, one of the movement's leading voices. A roofer by trade, Adisk once published a magazine critical of the legal system. Why is the sovereign citizen movement growing?
What's driving people to it is they are beginning to understand that the government has moved away from fundamental principles that this nation is built on. Where are the limits in limited government? The sovereignty movement is attempting to rediscover those limits and reassert them.
Adisk, like other sovereign gurus, shares his views on the internet. With no formal organization to join, dues to pay, or leaders to elect, the sovereign citizen movement exists largely online, where ideology is discussed in chat rooms and on websites. Jerry Kane had his own website, and today there are plenty more.
You were born free, now you can live free.
You always have the option to reject their governance and therefore escape tyranny.
Because it's your life, and the power is really in the people.
In addition to sites featuring sovereign IDs, phony vehicle registration, and license tags, people can watch an endless stream of mind-numbing seminars on how, with just the right paperwork, you too can beat the system.
You can't really believe in what they peddle unless you've turned off a common sense switch. They think that if they sign documents in red crayons, it takes them out of the jurisdiction of the court.
Red crayons.
Some do, yeah. They think that if they sign their name on an angle or put a thumbprint in blood, I mean, I can come up with several hundred of these examples that sound ludicrous to someone outside. To the people within the movement, they make perfect sense.
Another reason for Vosper's concern is the marked increase in violence associated with sovereign citizens, much of it directed at police and judges. A South Carolina sovereign citizen awaits execution for killing 2 lawmen in a standoff. In Texas, a sovereign faces attempted capital murder charges in the shooting of 3 men, 2 of them sheriff's deputies. And an Alaska sovereign citizen, 5 others, are charged with plotting to kill 2 judges, state troopers, and an IRS agent. Alfred Addix told us he's never advocated violence, yet listen to what he said on his internet radio show.
Hello everyone, welcome to Global Government News. Today is Wednesday, February 8th, 2012, and I'm Darko. So there you go, you saw it right there. That was some pretty scary stuff. Contained in that video, pure propaganda, of course. And what? It's all based off what? Freeman. And somehow they're associating violence with Freeman. Well, this is the most violent institution ever known to man in history, which is what? A network, which is called what? The government. The most violent. If you don't pay taxes, you will get shot. If you challenge them, you will get shot on your doorstep, like Bill Cooper, and they'll have whatever little stupid legal reasons that they have to SWAT team and have helicopters rain down on you. Most, if not all, sovereign citizens or freemen are nonviolent. The only time they are, quote, violent is when their, what do you want to call it, their freedom is violated. So if you go in there and you basically want to tell someone or commit them of a non-violent crime, and then you try getting violent with them, and then they answer in kind with violence, well then they say, you're violent, see? These are violent people. So just one thing, there is a difference between people who want, I would imagine people who want to do this thing, and there's people that I guess you can call stateless society or anarchists. There's a difference between all of them. There's, quote, patriots who aren't part of this group, and then there's people who are basically these freemen. And trust me, the reason they're poor and their wives leave them is because they're trying to not be a slave. This is what happens when you try not to be a slave. You try to assert your rights. And see, everybody talks about rights. They think rights are going over and bombing people and having cameras everywhere, and they think somehow they do that to maintain their freedom. No, people that get shot like that, dude, defending themselves as sovereign citizens, those are the ones that are actually fighting for their rights. And they're trying to scare little scampy sheep into thinking with propaganda like that, that's actually violence and extremists and terrorists. So lastly, and we'll move on here, the reason that this is a threat is because if this idea, because that, you got to remember, this is why Martin Luther King was killed. This is why people are killed. I mean, for whatever it's worth, there's, he may be a communist, he may be a Luciferian, but whatever. John Lennon killed. He had an idea of peace. These guys had an idea of peace and nonviolence. If you have an idea of no government, an idea of peace and no violence, those 3 things, and you get it out there or you assert that, you're not going to live long. Trust me. You will not live that long. All right? You're going to be either attacked by microwaves and give you cancer, and you could die slowly that way. You could be set up and carjacked and killed. Whatever. But that message of nonviolence, no government, or limited government, and peace, it does not coexist with the government, which has a monopoly on violence. So I like to put this out there for people to just put in their heads is what? The idea of, well, if this is such a great system, then how come we can't just pay taxes voluntarily, so that when things just start getting out of hand like they have been for at least 50 to 100 years, maybe 150 years, you could just say, well, I'm not going to pay my taxes anymore because this isn't part of the contract. You guys aren't fulfilling the contract, right? And so people could just voluntarily pay taxes. Well, if that happened, most people wouldn't pay their taxes and there would be no government, and they'd have all this money and they'd be reinvesting and stuff like that, and then there would be no government. See, that they don't want you to know that. So this is from the Anti-Defamation League, which is set up by basically Zionists. That's what it is. I mean, I'm not anti-Semitic, but I guess some people that are considered to be anti-Semitic are actually anti-Zionist. So this is part of their end of their tentacles. One of them is the ADL, and they say what? Its ideology is anti-government, some white supremacist elements. They always throw in the racist, so now you're a racist, which is again made up by them. And anti-government means that you are going to be out to get the government. No, you just want to stay away from that violence. So they get violent. Vigilante courts, they have shortwave radios, the internet, schools of common law. Ooh, common law, that's dangerous. From the FBI's website, sovereign citizens, a growing domestic threat to law enforcement. And this is talking about counterterrorism. See, they walk in the shadows among us. It's a loosely network of American litigants. Well, I've had actually a sovereign citizen or he's actually a freeman, make a comment in my board. They don't like to be called sovereign citizens. The idea of being a sovereign is that you're not a citizen. So to call them sovereign citizens is actually a term made up by them, by the government, by their little federal bureaus, and by these Zionist groups, basically ADL and that. So FBI warns of threat from anti-government extremists. February 6th says extremists opposed to taxes and regulations pose a growing threat to local law enforcement officers in the United States corporation. The FBI warned on Monday. This is so hard to read, guys, just so you know. Routine encounters with police can turn violent at the drop of a hat, right? Said Stuart MacArthur, Deputy Assistant Director in the FBI's counterterrorism, at the drop of a hat. Well, let's see. Because they do what they're going to do, and then as soon as they start saying, oh, we're going to arrest you, we're going to detain you, and if you don't, we're going to shoot you, well, the freeman will say, well, you're not going to detain me. And then they say, well, we're going to shoot you. Okay, well, then I draw. I mean, that's common sense, dude. So I'm calling them paranoid. I mean, come on, Homeland Security, you're all militia extremists now. Says here, dated November 10th, 2011, was sent out by email to law enforcement, Homeland Security agencies, and said here, Office of Intelligence and Analysis. Groups or individuals who facilitate or engage in acts of violence directed at federal, state, local government officials or infrastructure in response to their belief that government deliberately is stripping Americans of their freedoms, which they are, and is attempting to establish a totalitarian regime. Well, they already have. It's called a scientific dictatorship. These individuals, with Lucifer at the helm, mind you, these individuals consequently oppose many federal and state authority, laws, and regulation, which are millions. There's a law for just about everything, including not being able to purchase milk on a certain day. They just don't enforce it. Particularly those related to firearm ownership, so that you can defend yourself against pigs and against what? Federal government, like in Ruby Ridge. Well, they died, see? And often belong to armed paramilitary groups. Well, a lot of them are actually vets that realize that they're played and manipulated, and so, yeah. Basically, they thought that they were going over to maintain their fight. They swore an oath to the Constitution, right? Just like the police did. No, they swear an oath to the Fraternal Order and then the Constitution. So then they come back after realizing they're all traumatized, right, and freaked out about what they actually did, and they realized that they were used by the military-industrial complex and the Luciferians and the Zionists. And then what happens? Ooh, they get armed, and now they are dangerous. They're violent. So just in a recent article I covered last week, what they call them, that they say that they have a mental disorder. U.S. no-fly list of suspected terrorists doubles in 12 months. February 7th, very symbolic, guys, militia trial starts in Michigan with jury picks, and of course they were set up. They actually had this guy right here was actually possibly an agent. So the federal government was worried that they were going to launch an attack out of their trailer full of trash all over their yard. Yeah. Under the Jackboot of American Secretary General, INTERPOL is now tracking dissidents. This is GGN.